Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2025. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with flagstone motifs of trapezoid twists. Welcome to day 24 of Advent of Tess 2025, where we are folding this pattern named Serrated on a 24-fold triangle grid on a hexagon. So this pattern uses the double depth closed hexagon that we learned yesterday, and then it has this flagstone motif of open trapezoid twists with closed rhombus twists on the back. Now this one is very exciting for me. And we're going to go ahead and start. If you want one side in particular to be the front, then flip to the back side to start your double depth closed hexagon twist. So just like yesterday, we've got the mountain folds going out to the corners and the valley folds 2 grid spaces away. And we're going to use the table as our friend to help us in setting up these double depth pleats. Remember that we want to have a hexagon with 2 spaces per side in the middle. And once we've got that established on one edge of that central hexagon, we can use the central hexagon to reference where our folds are going. Of course, we do want to verify that they are indeed landing on the corners, but this is an easier way to find your mountain folds because you don't have to pick up the edge, which means you can keep the rest of your paper more folded and flat on the table. And by flat, I mean the edge is flat on the table because the center is still very 3D. And the way I showed yesterday is more of a let it gradually flatten down by pinching things together. But you can also do the same collapse as with the single depth closed hexagon, where you tap the top, grab the sides, and then get it to rotate around somehow, which is honestly being a bit of a pain for me today. So maybe the collapsing down and then making sure that you're fully rotated is a better bet. Also, the exact collapse method that you use is going to vary how it feels depending on what paper you're using. So with my skytone paper, I was able to kind of manhandle it, get it down into place relatively straightforwardly. And the paper didn't give me any extra trouble with that. So now that we have the double depth closed hexagon twist, I'm going to flip the paper over and we're going to put in our open trapezoids. So to start, I'm going to have the valley folds for these open trapezoids coming right to the closed hexagon hole. And then we know what direction the double depth pleat is. It's the one connected to the hexagon. Our pleat in this direction has to be single depth. And so we can pull up our single depth pleat. This mountain coming from the double depth pleat continues as a mountain of the middle single depth pleat, and then this grid intersection 1 space out from where our first single depth pleat hit is going to be where the mountain of the 3rd single depth pleat comes in. I want to make sure that I've got the valley folds on my 2nd and 3rd single depth pleats firmly in place in order to get that trapezoid twist to show up cleanly. Because if these are still up in the air, it can very easily try and hide from you. But we want to get those nice and clean, and then we can press from the top to squash. And as usual, in origami tessellations, you can go either way around. I'm going to prefer to go counterclockwise on this one because I can see more of what I'm doing with the compound wrap that's going to come up in a moment. So I have my valley fold for the trapezoid coming out from the closed triangle hole. This valley is contacting the mountain of a pleat from the previous trapezoid, and I'm going to do a compound wrap where these pleats intersect by popping down the mountain from the previous trapezoid and letting the valley of this new pleat zigzag through and the mountain of the new pleat follow one grid spacing away. Then that can lay down flat. I can hold on to that. It's enough distance away from what I'm actively folding that that's already flat. And then I can find my remaining single depth pleats. Notice how this really wants to trench down in. I'm going to grab this third single depth pleat and pull it out away to get this space next to the hexagon flat again. Then we can squash the new trapezoid twist. And I'll hold off on flipping over and folding the rhombus twists until we've gotten all of the trapezoids in place. So once again, we've got our valley fold coming out from the closed hexagon hole. I'm going to pop the grid line for the valley fold down and let it bounce as it hits the mountain fold and bounce again as it hits the valley one space below. And this valley fold that's passing through is going to have a mountain fold following one grid spacing away. This pleat that it's interrupting is going to continue on the same grid lines on the far side. And then we're finding our third single depth pleat. By the way, this mountain is 1, 2, 3, 4 grid spaces away from the next parallel mountain. So that can be a signal if you're confused about where the mountain needs to go. And then we can press to squash. And repeat again. This time I'll do it without drawing on the paper. So I'm finding a valley fold that goes up to the central hexagon and putting in a compound wrap. Then finding the remaining pleat of my trapezoid twist, making sure the valley of the middle single depth pleat is on the right side. I already had that mountain from the double depth pleat. And repeating again. Notice I'm establishing the valley fold and then following up with the mountain fold. Then establishing the mountain of the remaining single depth pleat before following up with the valleys of the second and third single depth pleats. And squash. And then my final trapezoid on this side, or for today, is going to have that same valley fold going to the central hexagon. It's going to interrupt the pleat down below with a compound wrap. I have the mountain of the middle single depth pleat one space further out than where the mountain hits for the first single depth pleat. I will have the mountain for the third single depth pleat, and this is going and impacting a pleat from our first trapezoid, so I can go ahead and put in a compound wrap on that one. So that's let the top plate overshoot one space, put in a three-way intersection of mountains, three-way intersection of mountains, one below that, and everything slots into place. And then we can press to squash the trapezoid twist. And we've already got this saw blade motif on the front. Flipping over, we're going to take each of those compound wraps and turn them into closed rhombus twists. So what I did there is I took the compound wrap. Notice that there's kind of the pleats wrapped around and then the one tucking into the middle. Take that point tucked into the middle and pop it up. I keep all of the mountain folds that were already there in the wrap and lay the valleys on the outsides of these mountain folds relative to the middle of the twist. And pop, set up pleats, squash. Pop, set up pleats, and squash. Of course, I do expect that it will take longer for you than it does for me, because I've literally folded probably thousands of this rhombus twist. And so popping that wrap is kind of second nature at this point. Okay, so that is everything that we're folding today. We get some nice quick ones towards the end, and that is our serrated pattern. So this pattern is really cool in backlighting also. I'm gonna grab that real quick. We get those saw blade motifs, and you can actually see me fold the first hour of this larger version with repeats on my YouTube channel, Gathering Folds. It's one of my live streams from this summer. A lot of the choices of what patterns to include in Advent of Tess this year hinged around me getting to fold a piece of this with more repeats, because I'd folded it before on 32 divisions and needed an excuse to fold more of this pattern. And I'd say I made the most of it. This is another one that I'd folded on 32 divisions named zinnias. And then there's daffodils and crocuses, all in the Advent of Tess 2025 ebook. This one is particularly cool because it still allows a pleated border. The original allows a pleated border as well, but I folded pretty close to the edge anyways. So all of these patterns are in the Advent of Tess 2025 ebook at gatheringfolds.com, origamiusa.org, or origamishop.com. There are lots of courses that you can get from me to learn to read crease patterns. That would be Tessellation Starter Sequence, to learn about design and practice folding some similar patterns. That would be Tessellation Academy, and all of those can be found at training.gatheringfolds.com. And there's just so many exciting things that can be folded with a single sheet of paper. And even when you have that really cool motif, you can apply it in so many different ways. So that's one of the things that's really exciting for me about Origami Tessellations, and I hope it's exciting for you too. I'd love to see your photos of what you folded from this tutorial. Go ahead and tag me at Gathering Folds on Instagram or Facebook, or share it on my private Discord server, which you can get access to by signing up for emails at training.gatheringfolds.com. We have a whole Advent of Tess channel, and it's been really popping this year, which I love to see. So that's all for today. Tomorrow is the final day of Advent of Tess this year, and we're folding this pattern called Coronas, which does use a different hexagon twist than we've seen before. And this is why we had all of those harder patterns earlier, because this spacing is really tight. So look forward to that one, and I will see you tomorrow.